Hi, my name is Tom and welcome to my channel, Integral Views. So I've become increasingly aware that online a lot of the discussion with regard to integral theory focuses on stages of consciousness, and to some extent I've done this a lot myself so far on this channel. But what is really lacking is a discussion of states of consciousness, because really this is the area that we should all be focused on. So for people, who want to get involved in integral theory and develop and change their lives, integral life practice, etc., really the focus should be on states of consciousness, training those states of consciousness. The way that this functions is that, my model for this, the way that I look at it, is that IQ is your potential for stage development. So it is necessary but not sufficient for high stages of consciousness. So if you have a low IQ, if you have an IQ of 80 or whatever, then you simply will not be capable of achieving these high stages of consciousness that we see in the developmental models and within integral theory. That's the harsh truth. Because those stages come along with complex models of reality that consider increasingly complicated factors and variables within reality within which we exist. But that doesn't mean that you can't achieve advanced states of consciousness. So we think of states and stages. Stages are vertical, lines of development. Really they're holonic spheres that are kind of progress outwards and are ever kind of progressively higher perspectives, or sort of wider perspectives. I'll put a little diagram of this on the screen right now so it makes a bit more sense. So we think of those stages as vertical, but then you have horizontal development as well. And horizontal development is states of consciousness. And this is what 99% of people should be focused on. Focusing on stages of consciousness, really the thinking and the manifestations that arise as a result of high stages of consciousness, that's just a byproduct of the consciousness itself. You can't look at a stage map and then consider, these people who are displaying these high stages of consciousness are thinking like this, so let me think like that, and then I'll be like that. It doesn't work like that. The thinking is the byproduct of the consciousness that exists at the high stage, right? So IQ is your potential for stage development, but whether it is fulfilled, whether that potential ceiling, that IQ ceiling of stage development is fulfilled or not, depends on your states of consciousness. So if you have a high IQ, but you have a low state development of consciousness, right? So you haven't developed through the different states and done meditative practices and zazen, etc., then you'll never fulfill that high stage development, which is your potential defined by your IQ. I'll put a little diagram again on the screen to try to make this make a bit more sense. So the point I'm making really is that we should all be focused on state training. We should all be focused on meditation. We shouldn't be focused on thinking about what high stages of consciousness manifest as within thought patterns or whatever. Those are byproducts, right? You don't think yourself into a high stage of consciousness. You don't think yourself into an advanced state of consciousness. You don't really think yourself anywhere at all. It's basically irrelevant. But people are caught on this, and the reason why, I'm just going to say it like I see it, is because they are within an orange stage of development. So the way that they view the world is egoic. They want to self-manifest, self-maximize. They're interested in hookup culture and being an alpha male or whatever else that is an egoic sort of manifestation. It's an egoic motivation. And it really displays their stage development. Those individuals typically aren't and the really higher stages of consciousness in terms of their stage development. Maybe they have moments there. Maybe they understand it theoretically, but it's not their actual center of gravity as a day-to-day experience of reality. And the reason for that is because either their IQ isn't high enough, sorry to say it, or they haven't developed the state training, the state of consciousness that's necessary to manifest that stage. Because a stage is just it's basically a state of consciousness that's become permanent. I think there's a bit more to it, but that's effectively what's going on. So you have IQ, which is your limiting factor, okay? And then whether you fulfill the potential that IQ gives you in your hardware and your brain is dependent on the degree to which you've done state training. How centered, how much consciousness have you brought into your life? How much have you maximized that potential within your brain to create consistent consciousness at that high stage level, right? And this gets basically no focus. It seems to me that integral theory has all become about self-development, which is an egoic practice, and it misses the entire point. Now, it misses the really important point. So what we should be focused on is state development, training states of consciousness into increasingly rare and advanced states of consciousness, right? And we do that through Zen meditation, Zazen meditation, Buddhist meditation like Satipatthana, Vipassana, many different meditative methods, even transcendental meditation. So there's a lot of different methods out there, but those are what we should be focused on, not getting into the detail of, they think like this because, you're on this stage development level. I mean, it's good to consider for getting an understanding of reality, but you're not just going to look at a chart and then think your way into that. You have to train your way into that through training states of consciousness. So my channel will become increasingly focused on state training because that's what's really sorely lacking in the discourse around integral theory at the moment, in my opinion. I just want to give a bit more context of this, okay? So I already spoke about stages of consciousness and how IQ determines your potential stage of development. And we think about that vertically, right? And then think about horizontal states of consciousness. You have gross, subtle, causal, and nondual. And you train those states of consciousness through a meditative practice. So there are very clear mechanisms and practices that simply train that state. And yes, it is work, okay? It's hard work. But consider this, two things. First of all, if you have a high IQ and you have a low state training, then that manifests as what we could call attention deficit disorder or ADHD, because it's having a very capable brain that is processing complex models and things, but there's no centered consciousness. And so it's scattered and it's chaotic. And this is increasingly prevalent across society. So the most important thing that we can do is train states of consciousness. The stages, leave it to the side. Yeah, it's interesting, but if you're not doing states, if you're just thinking about stages and you're not considering states and you're not doing state training, you haven't even started, You're not even on the path. It's irrelevant, effectively. So now another thing to consider is that you can have people, and we have had many people throughout history, who have very advanced state training, but very low stages. How can that happen? Well, if you have an IQ or a processing capacity within the brain that caps you at mythological, at ethnocentric, let's say, a religious doctrine, dogmatic religious, if your IQ cap is there and your state training is really advanced, either through contemplative prayer in Christianity or through meditative practices in Buddhism, then you'll interpret those realizations of consciousness, those states of consciousness, causal, non-dual consciousness, you'll interpret that within the model that is situated in the ethnocentric religious doctrine stage, which is amber, right? And that's capped by your IQ. So your IQ is essentially irrelevant for your ability to train states. So why are we even focusing on stages very much? Yeah, it's important for context of current events and getting an understanding of the world, but we're not going to magically make people have 140 IQ and have very high stages, just by clicking our fingers or by getting them to read the right books or do the right things. It's not the focus that we should have. Actually, the focus we should have is maximizing the potential for stage development that people have. How do we do that? We do that through state training. State training is the missing piece of the puzzle, right? It's the most important thing. So I will, in my next video, give an overview of my experience in this and how I went through a state training journey for over the last 20 years and what that looked like. But essentially, I just wanted to make this quick video because I do find it somewhat, there's definitely something lacking from the conversation right now. I see people talking, using ACAL maps, AQAL, and then integral theory, and talking about stage development, talking about second tier thinking, and it's just, it's kind of all done with a lack of state development. So, at best, these people are having momentary insights at that high stage development, but it's not a center of gravity because they haven't gone through that state training, So state training is really the thing. Okay, that was just a quick message, a quick rant I wanted to get out my system. I hope that was interesting. Please like and subscribe. Cheers.